everyone to this roundtable on the rise of AI, big data, robotics, AR and VR, and cloud infrastructure for MedTech. Great to have you with us. Great to have this awesome panel of startups and scale-ups with us as well today to share their insights with the opportunities and challenges of bringing a medtech to market with using these different interesting technologies. I am Philip Murray, the startup program leader for UK, Ireland, and Northern Europe for OVHcloud, and I'll be chairing the session today. OVHcloud, for those of you that don't know, is a leading European cloud provider. We've been operating now for more than 20 years. We offer data sovereign solutions on our 33 global water-cooled data centers. If you're wondering kind of where a cloud fits into this, well, we are already an enabler for a lot of these technologies at the moment, and particularly with, as you heard from David King's presentation, if you got the keynote that data is a massive opportunity, but it also requires massive amounts of storage, and the cloud is certainly helping to manage that data and allow companies like these on the panel to access that data and to use solutions on top of that to get and extract value from that data. So we're going to be hearing more about that from the panel. So I'd like to now hand over to the panel members just to give a short introduction about themselves before we move into some questions. So I'm going to ask you, Karina from Benozi, if you can start with an introduction.
Thank you. Didn't expect to be the first, but thanks for that. So my name is Karina Cunha, and I'm the founder and CEO of Benozi. Benozi is health tech, med tech, clean tech, etc. device that it helps you breathe clean air by having a nose filter. We have developed our MVP last year, and we're in the process of developing our V2. We are looking to be integrating our device with an app and sensors as well to actually collect the data of the air quality that you would be inhaling if you're not wearing our device, and let people know when they are entering high air pollution zones so they can be protecting themselves, and then use that data to predict air pollution patterns in the future and potentially impact to the health. So this is really where AI comes in for us, which is making sense of weather patterns, understanding differences from day to day, and starting to predict that. Because currently we don't have enough data around what air pollution looks like from street to street. And we also have very, very little capacity to actually predict what that will look like.
Great, thanks, Karina. So for those of you that just joined us, we've just done we're just starting with the introduction. So Karina from Benozi has just shared, and we're now going to move over to Kartika. Can you give us an introduction, please?
Hi, I'm Kartika. I'm the CEO of Brainberry Limited. At Brainberry, we are looking at improving cognition for people with dementia and trying to delay the progression of the disease. For us, the AI comes in because we are into serious gamification and also wearable headset. So we collect quite a lot of data, and the AI helps to personalize the treatment as per an individual so that we can delay the progression. And obviously, when you have an AI and you're looking at quite a lot of data, you're also looking at a cloud system to manage the data, and that's what we do.
Thanks, Kartika. Adam, can you go next?
Sure. Hi there. I'm Adam Kierer, and I'm a CMO of DiabTrend. We made a diabetes diary for diabetic people, and we use AI to support our food recognition, portion estimation, and auto nutrition value calculation in the app. So that can save really a lot of time for those people who need to log all their meals. That's one. And the other one is the blood glucose level prediction, because based on the logs, the data our customers provide us, we can predict 4 hours long in the future the blood sugar level with 98% accuracy. So that can really prevent diabetic people from extreme low or extreme high blood sugar levels, which are the most destructive states of this disease. So briefly, that's it.
Thanks, Adam. Though that's great example of how the use of data is helping to predict into the future with something that's difficult to manage like diabetes. Emir, can you do your introduction, please?
Yes, I'm the co-founder and CEO of Virtual Leap. We combine virtual reality with neurosciences to address a host of cognitive disorders, everything from learning challenges to all the way up to cognitive decline conditions like Alzheimer's disease. We've created a library of VR cognitive games that test and train a range of cognitive abilities like information processing, memory, attention, but also motor control and spatial orientation and spatial audio awareness. And one of the most exciting applications of this type of volumetric or spatialized embodied digital format is it does put together an unprecedented order of magnitude, if not 2 orders of magnitude more data into the equation. So we collect about 200,000 data points every 3 minutes of our experiences. And that's not even including the physiological sensors that are now integrated into the VR headsets. For example, the HP OmniSet has pupil dilation tracking, heart rate variability, skin conductivity, and with AI learning systems, we're able to actually know how focused you are or stressed you are. So our applications are quite profound, I think, as VR becomes the new medium that's playing a role in this sector.
Wow, yeah. Thanks, Emir. Can we now move over to you, Keith?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me on this panel. So I'm the CEO and co-founder of MedWise.ai. And what we're doing is to really build a Google for doctors. So I'm a medical doctor myself. And one of my experiences when I was a junior doctor doing night shifts, I often find it difficult to really quickly find answers I need at the point of care. So we're using natural language processing AI technology to then be able to provide answers to clinicians really quickly at the point of care. And given now with the pandemic, there's increasing demand on the NHS system, but also a decreasing workforce. Any time save for clinicians is very important. So we use our AI to support clinicians and empower them to provide best practice care to patients.
Great, excellent access to information for doctors. Last but not least, Matt, all the way from Seattle. Very kind of you to be up at this early hour of the morning. Please do your intro.
Yes, hello everyone. I represent ReMed. It's a deep tech company that applies its proprietary technologies to utilize eye as a biomarker. So we started with vision therapy of binocular vision disorders, but the real scaling potential is within our diagnostic services. And because we have developed the world's most precise mobile eye tracking for VR and AR headsets, we're able to track microsaccadic eye movements and also saccadic drift. And therefore, we're able to run screening, universal screening for pretty much everyone who's 40 plus at PCP offices, optic stores, pharmacies, for all kinds of neurodegenerative disorders such as Alzheimer, Parkinson, Huntington, and dozens of others. And if you top up our eye tracking with a proprietary bifocal optics, you're also able to actually run refractive errors assessment on one device in automated way that does not have to be assisted by any skilled personnel. So in a nutshell, we expand access to care, lower the cost of care, and also highly increase the quality of care because it's all digital. And like everyone else, we use a lot of data, AI, machine learning, and cloud services, of course, on top of that too. Thanks.
Brilliant. Thanks, everyone. So we've heard now that how these panelists are representing the use of AI, VR, serious games, and cloud in medtech. The first question to the panelists is: can you tell us how you've leveraged these technologies? So very much, you've kind of given us a bit of the what. Now more about how you've leveraged these products, these technologies in your offering, and the benefits that really has for the patient, as well as for other med techs looking to improve their products or bring new ones to the market. So let's get a bit more into the nuts and bolts of the technology and how you've applied it from a benefit point of view. Can we go back to you, Karina?
Yeah, of course. I think that one of the main challenges is evaluating, to be honest, with any new company is actually funding and being able to leverage the resources that you're going to need in order to build out the capabilities for you to actually enable AI to become effective within your product. So for us, we have been very careful about what steps we are taking in the development of the product in order to think about the data that we need to create for us to have a narrow enough scope for any AI that we actually use to be effective within that narrow scope, and then be opening that over time. That has been quite a challenge to do with medtech, because I think that a lot of you guys are aware, it's quite difficult to get investment for medtech in general. There is quite a lot of risk. There is often a hardware component, at least we have that. And with that in mind, we have been mainly focusing on looking for grants in order to be able to fund this initial stage of development until we can actually have a product that becomes a little bit less risky for us to then bring external investors on board.
Okay, and what do you see as the direct benefits of implementing this AI for your end user?
Yeah, so the AI is going to provide something that has never been done before in the world, which is actually predict your air pollution exposure at an individual level. Currently, you have about 30,000 air pollution towers worldwide, which means that it's very, very little. And we have these big data points about what air pollution looks like in London. By the way, London is a great city because we have more towers than in a lot of other cities, but it doesn't actually tell you what is your exposure if you're near a car, if you're in the tube, and that can vary greatly from what you have at a city level. And so we want people that have respiratory conditions to be aware that they are maybe entering a higher pollution zone that could potentially have impact to their health, and be able to predict that if they are taking certain paths from the data that we have collected on other days, this may be the exposure that they are going to have. And long term, we are looking to also add sensors to some of our devices to track people's breathings. So then we can see any changes in their breathing patterns and predict if there is any disease that is potentially evolving based on those changes. So AI is just going to allow us to take the data to the next level and actually inform people about their choices.
All right. So you're not only kind of relying on your hardware to kind of protect them wherever they are, but you're also using the data to actually inform your end user better as to, where they should be or where they shouldn't be, and what effect that might have on their health
Exactly.
as they move around.
Exactly. The end user, and eventually we would like to partner with the NHS and doctors, etc., to be providing them with their collecting. Hopefully that can help with studies, and then we can also supplement what we're learning from the AI with the medical community, so then we can have better predictions as well as to the impact to a person.
All right, thanks, Karina. Kartika, can you tell us a bit about how you see the benefits of the technology that you're tapping into? So you're on mute there.
Yeah, if you can you hear me now? Yeah. So if
Yes.
you look into any wearables, right, and especially within medtech, and we are dealing with a wearable EEG and serious games, you can get quite a lot of data. And it's about not the amount of data, it's about what you're presenting to your end user is important. And that's where the AI comes in. And also, the AI can easily evolve into continuous monitoring or therapeutics or diagnosis or prognosis for different end users. That's how we see the leveraging of the AI is. So, for example, like a diagnosis might not be very important for a carer, but it might be important for a GP, right? Whereas a continuous monitoring would be very important for a carer at a given point, or an end user, the patient themselves. So, you look into the quality of data, but equally what needs to be presented to whom. And you also remove the junk amount of data that's not necessary, because AI provides, the wearables nowadays provides quite a lot of data, and the leveraging lies how the AI is used. And that's how we see it, or I see it, yeah.
All right. So the benefit of this AI process for you is giving the the end user a kind of a simpler view of what's going on, but the kind of the right information at the right time.
Yes, but it's also about what is the function of it, right? As an end user, like me being a patient or someone who's looking at my glucose monitoring, a continuous monitoring would be more important to me. Whereas from a GP point of view, it would be more of a diagnosis or the insulin levels. So it's also how the AI can present different parameters to different people within the medtech.
All right. Thanks, Kartika. Adam, your view on this question?
Yeah, so basically, as I mentioned, we use AI on two different functions of our application. One is the food recognition function, for which we use the Google modeling system. So we used preset models, which was very useful for us. But in the other case, which is the blood sugar level prediction, it was basically the core of our project, our business. One of our founders did this thesis for the university, made this thesis, and that was the basic. And so on that field, we developed our own system and model, which is quite complex, but for now we can see that it's more powerful than any of the other solutions on the market. So that's about the AI systems. We also we are introducing our gamification function as well, because we are facing with the challenge that we need a lot of data, especially for the prediction, and it's very hard to build a new habit and to introduce these kind of technologies for diabetic people, and in fact for any kind of people. So we really need to encourage our users to keep logging and keep providing data for the quality of the prediction. So it's one of the challenges we are facing, but what can really make a difference in diabetic people's life is the time-saving element. So when you really need to log your each and every meal, you need good resource of data. Otherwise, you are getting lazy and you just rationalize it like it's not so important. But at the end of the day and the end of your life, it really matters, because if you can manage your diabetes well, you can live approximately 15 years longer. So either you start to providing bad quality data, or you kind of miss your logs, or either you're able to build your new habit. And if a meal log can be done in less than 1 minute, I think it's a really powerful feature that can make your life easier and your diabetes management faster and better.
Thanks, Adam. So actually, would you say this ability to capture that meal information is even more important for them than actually predicting, kind of the future sugar levels?
Yes. So if you log your meal precisely, our prediction is better, but also we can really tell you if you need extra insulin, or if you do need to make any actions to be in the normal range of blood glucose level. So it's way more important, and also because you need to do this until the rest of your life. So it's better to build a strong habit.
All right, great. So it's a real the technology being used there to help change the behavior of the patient.
It's not easy.
Yes, no, brilliant, but interesting story. All right, great. Keith, over to you. Oh, sorry, Amir.
I had to move to another room. We just are doing an office change, and the echo was insuperable. When you're talking about virtual reality, we're talking about a sector that is continuously emerging, and I think that pandemic only had it's kind of bad to say, but the silver lining, I guess, for a lot of your technologies, but certainly for virtual reality companies, is in terms of adoption, in terms of regulatory pathways, and stubborn groups saying no to something like VR, because it is something that is kind of unknown in terms of retention, in terms of hardware iteration. It's a nightmare. Continuously, it's changing up, and we have to support new headsets, new parameters, new SDKs, new all sorts of things that keep on disrupting the ground beneath our feet. However, the technology is just getting cheaper. It's getting lighter. Hopefully, with 5G, we can actually make this the hardware much more lighter, because of the edge computing and all the promises that provides. In terms of how we work with everything on the cloud with AWS, we've structured things in a way that we can scale and not become broke every month to month because of the amount of data that we're actually collecting at the moment. And right at the moment, especially right now, where we're actually working with some partners to create these experimental algorithms that I mentioned before, the opportunity of volumetric data sets and creating digital phenotypes, with the fusion of all this physiological data on top of all the interaction data, and the fact that the interaction data in a VR setting benefits from I would say, a higher level of engagement, because it is environments that are ecologically valid and multisensory. It's kind of like when we look at one of our end users, which is older adults. We just had a workshop last month in one of the largest senior living communities here in Portugal, and they actually find onboarding into the VR experience much more native and much more intuitive than anything that we would be able to do on a screen-based device, which to them is much more alien. And so it kind of challenges the perception that older adults are actually Luddites or are not, inclined to use technology. In fact, they are more likely to have higher engagement in VR, we have found, and as well that translates, at least anecdotally for now, in higher adherence rates.
Oh, that's really interesting. So easier to onboard, which I would have thought wasn't the case, but obviously more engaging. I can relate to that after doing a few VR kinds of games and things like that. Very engaging. I can imagine it must be exciting for the end user. Keith, over to you.
Sure. So in terms of how we leverage AI, we think we are very fortunate at the time point where natural language processing AI is kind of exploding. And this is because of a new architecture called transformer-based neural networks that has just been kind of invented in 2018. I have always had the problem as a medical doctor not being able to find information really quickly at the point of care. But I think it's really these AI technological advancements that allowed us to really now have the opportunity to build solutions that really answer questions that doctors have. And we're leveraging these new models and combined with more traditional ML with like entity linking, etc., to build a whole architecture that can really support doctors at the point of care. And ultimately, when doctors get the right information at the right time, they can improve the care delivered to patients. So our end users are doctors, but I think we're also very patient focused to make sure that the ultimate outcome is improved patient care. So I think it's a very exciting space. I think similar to what Amar have mentioned in the natural language processing side of things, there are new models and new technological advancements coming out. So we continuously kind of monitor and see what we can use and incorporate into our product.
No, interesting. Do you have any insight into kind of when the doctor's hitting your platform the most, in their day? Is it really on the move, or is it when they're preparing for some kind of procedure or what have you? Anything around that?
Yeah, so we've launched our solution for primary care, so GP, so mainly in the clinic. So we see actually there's more usage in the morning versus in the afternoon, but it's throughout the day, be it during the consultation, before or after the consultation. They can all use our product for looking for information.
Thanks, Keith. Matt, over to you.
I think I'll try to answer that question from like two perspectives. The first one is more general, that would be applicable to, I think, all of us here, that machine learning and artificial intelligence can bring tremendous value when it comes to analyzing huge amounts of data. And all of us here work with devices that collect data through different types of sensors. It can be like in our case, eye tracking, but it can be also haptic gloves, it can be EEG, biofeedback, and virtual reality, in fact, is a great medium to provide both the stimuli, but also collect all sorts of data in a controlled, closed environment. So you always have sort of standardized type of gathering and processing data that enables you to compare different patients, like apple to apple, and then on top of all of that data, apply machine learning and artificial intelligence to find patterns, and also to teach the system to come up with sort of solutions. So like in a theme of prescriptive medicine, I think this is a great tool that could come up with ready-made prescriptions for patients while they are interacting with those systems. And I'll just give you an example based on what we do in terms of rehabilitation, because I said that we apply our technologies in both rehab and diagnostics, but we started from vision therapy And it's not only binocular vision disorders that is mostly about kids, amblyopia, strabismus, but also neurovision rehabilitation for post-stroke brain damage concussion patients, and also sports vision training. So in all of those cases, we're able to both stimulate visual cortex of a patient and read how the eyes react to the stimuli in any given moment. And when we apply machine learning and artificial intelligence on top of that, we can actually teach the system to self-adjust on the go based on how the patient is performing. So the therapy for each and every patient is tailor-made, not only to the patient's disorder or level of this disorder, but also to the level of their ability to interact with the content that is therapeutic. So I think that this is something that will not only gather all the data from numerous patients that none of the doctors would be able to even see in their lifetime, but also to actually apply prescriptions on how to act on that data for the patient. And this is, I think, to many of your points, very important that they would get informed on not only what their condition is, but actually on what to do to get better. So yeah, that's what I wanted to sort of wrap up.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Matt. That's fascinating how your technology can actually get smarter because of the access to the data on a kind of patient level. And do you have a similar experience to Amir in terms of the onboarding? And I mean, I think you've kind of spoken a bit about engagement, but with the onboarding as well, do you find it's actually reasonably simple and easy? The onboarding of the patient, onto the VR technology.
I mean, it depends on what type of services we're looking at, because if we're talking about any type of rehabilitation, like in Amir's case, then you need sort of adoption time. But if because they would be using that technology for probably weeks, if not even months. But in terms of diagnostics, I think that it does not actually require any adoption span, because you put a headset on somebody's head for literally like 15, 20 seconds, and that's it. So, and with the rise of AR and VR becoming more and more popular for, let's say, gaming purposes, people will not find it difficult or awkward to put a headset when they come to a PCP office to get the regular checkup, and at the same time they would be able to get screened for neurodegenerative disorders, to get their refractive errors assessment for new glasses, contact lenses. That's yeah.
All right. No, thanks. No, great. That's it. So that wraps up some of the benefits of these great new technologies. We've only got 10 minutes to go, and so I wanted to move on now to more of the challenges experience when using these technologies, within your businesses. And some of you already touched on some challenges. I know, Greendy, you started mentioning, some of the challenges around not so much the technology, but the fact that accessing funding for these kinds of businesses with these kinds of technologies is challenging. Adam, you mentioned data. Amir, you mentioned that it was kind of new technology, and therefore that creates issues. So obviously, if I kind of want to open it up to the floor, if you've got something that you'd like to add around challenges.
I would like to add something. I think the biggest challenge in AI, if you look into medtech, would be the clinical validation of it. So if you're going for FDA approval, how are you actually going to prove that your AI is really highly effective in terms of your diagnosis or even your treatment? I think that would be more challenging, because your clinical trials have to focus both on the overall treatment efficacy of the system, but you have to very specifically focus on the AI element to say that the AI is doing the right diagnosis or the right prognosis, because that comes under the patient safety. If I can make a wrong diagnosis with an AI, and if I couldn't, like, then it's a really patient safety problem. So the clinical validation around the AI is very important when you're really specifically trying to get into NHS or other public healthcare sectors. So that would be one key challenging, and also with the regulations as well, the AI, how you develop your AI, how you're going to prove the efficacy of your specific customized AI with respect to the output of patient safety would be
Right.
highly challenging for any technology.
So it's not just a matter of comparing with the efficacy of the traditional ways of doing things. Is it more complicated than that?
Yes, yeah. Because the new regulations with MDR do specifically ask for clinical trials with AI specified in the efficacy, yeah.
All right.
The new regulations emphasize on showing the efficacy very specific on the AI elements that any product develops.
And any recommendations on how to tackle that challenge?
Yeah, it depends. You have to go through when you're looking at your clinical trials and stuff, your clinical study design should always try to prove the element of AI, the safety elements of it, and also do complete, when you're iterating the AI, it needs to combine with your clinical trial results. And that's how you're going to prove to FDA that your AI is more efficient to get an FDA approval, either to reach NHS or NIH in the future. That needs to be my personal feeling with people with medtech. More people talk about the AI, but they don't really understand that they need to prove the clinical effectiveness of it. If they're specifically focusing to say, oh, I'm going to sell it to a GP, I'm going to sell it to an NHS system, it's not that easy.
I guess this is it's a challenge on your side, but I guess it gives some peace of mind to the end user, to the patient, that you know that you're going to have to do these validations before you're just pushing out and putting an AI label on your.
That's right. Yeah.
On your technology. So these are the challenges of working in a highly regulated industry like you do. Anyone else got anything they'd like to add?
I think I just wanted to elaborate a little bit more on this point, because in the end of the day, I think this is more of a problem for the person actually designing the trials and designing what the AI should be, rather than a problem of the AI itself. So whenever you're actually working with the technology, you need to validate, you need to go through the process of validation. And actually, I think it's more of a design component as well. So whenever we have been working with everything for Benozi, we're immediately talking to experts in the field to try to have their knowledge, which then the AI just actually works on backing, on supporting the information. And that really collaborative approach, it's essential. And one of the reasons why I mentioned earlier that the funding side is really expensive, because you want to have that dialogue with clinicians throughout the entire process, iterate and test everything before you ever go to market. And yeah, so there is a very big regulatory side, but I do think that a lot of it is more about how you design the study to test your AI and to prove your results than anything. And yeah, grant funding can help.
All right. So would you say that using these new technologies is actually increasing the time to market for a medtech, or?
It does, definitely, yes. Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
All right. So yeah, so you're going to have patience from investors and the like, and understand. And do you think there's enough understanding out there in terms of these challenges?
I think it differs from region to region. I think there is a very traditional way of looking in the UK market, whereas it's completely different in the States or Europe.
Yeah, I would say that some of this will also impacts even the way that we think about AI. So the way that I personally like to look at it is that it's embedded on whatever you do, and it needs to be a completely open dialogue. But I think that there's still some times that we think about AI as a black box, and we are not necessarily just thinking about an algorithm that is going to help improve our technology. We put it as like a mystery thing, and I think that starting to unveil this and just being a machine learning that helps you create better predictions of the data that you have, rather than putting on a special category, would already help quite a lot.
Yeah, you're touching on some of the questions coming from the audience around explainability of AI, and I think from my understanding, there is a lot. There are quite a lot of steps forward in terms of making AI more explainable, in terms of the technology itself. But I don't know if, as a panel, there's any feedback on that, on those particular questions around explainability of AI and kind of this black box mentality that the end user or the public might have around AI.
I think that it doesn't really need to be explained to patients, because for them it should be transparent. I mean, they shouldn't really bother with understanding how that system really works. I mean, you don't really question the way that diagnostics are done nowadays. You come and trust whatever you're given. So I think it's more about regulators to actually understand that AI can bring tremendous streamlining in the process of delivering healthcare to the masses, really. So I think that well, one way to do it, I mean, at least the way we're doing it at ReMed is not to incorporate AI in diagnostic process. We use AI later on, once we collect all the data and are able to, benchmark all of those patients' data and then draw conclusions that can help us to maybe find some patterns and for that it's actually a lot easier to prove than like a medical efficacy of a particular diagnosis with the prescription on how to act on that diagnosis. So I think that to do that, it will take a lot of time. But if you sort of park AI for this part of the process and let it be used for like streamlining and other things like that later on, it should make it a lot easier for you as a founder, business person, to bring that solution to life and give it to patients and caregivers.
Great. Certainly a lot to think about in terms of how you apply these technologies. What are going to be the benefits? What are going to be the challenges? We've certainly heard today about quite a lot of benefits of these different technologies, whether it's helping to onboard patients easier, or helping them to develop new habits which would have otherwise been very difficult for them to do. So that even sometimes that's more important than actually predicting some kind of future event. So it is very much a people problems that we're having to deal with here. Thank you everyone for your great insight today. I'm sure the audience will benefit, and thank you audience for some interesting questions and participating. And appreciate you attending, and thanks again to the panelists.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.